Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, James. I'm good. How are you?
Fabulous, thank you for asking.
Of course.
Always fabulous. What are we talking about today, then?
Today, we're going to talk about innovation.
Okay. Did I tell you I was once the International Innovations Project Manager? I was.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it was until you start really realising it was about chicken burgers. But, the job titles sound good.
It does. And that's the thing. So it is a popular buzzword. It is a trend. Companies all think it's very sexy and all want it, and people get excited by it. But we believe that often it's chased down in the wrong way. So we are going to talk to you about how you can really embrace innovation and make a real difference to your performance and enjoyment at work.
I agree with everything you say, apart from your point about we think it's sexy. It was sexy. That was me.
You are
I was
always
about
sexy,
24
James.
at the time. Before we go into innovation, then what have you been up to?
Good question, James. I finally, for those of who listened to this podcast a long time, finally had my home claim for my flooded cellar with Zurich finally closed after a mere 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Honestly, James, it has cost them an absolute arm and a leg. And the problems were, first off, it's the classic big company. What we're here for, we're here to save our customers when they need us, or we're here to make money. So let's find a way of declining a claim. When they finally gave it to a couple of small companies of surveyors and builders to fix it, did a fantastic job. Got it all fixed perfectly. But that was after they had spent 2 years of faffing around. Anyhow, James, what have you been up to?
Well, it's not what I've been up to, it's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Exciting. What?
Tomorrow, I am taking my youngest daughter. She wants to go for a look round Oxford University. Now, admittedly, this is only a look round, but I'm a bit worried about her parentage because she can't be my daughter. She's going to need to do that, can't she? So I need to have a stiff conversation with my wife, I reckon.
James, you're far too modest. You are perfectly capable of holding your own with those Oxford dons.
You think, father and child.
Get your shirt out today. That's pure Oxford, mate.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, it's very summary. So go on then. Innovation. Talk to me about innovation. What do you mean by innovation?
Before we get into innovation, James, we should just tell everyone that next week is the end of season 2 for us as we take a short break over the summer. So next week's episode will be our end of season finale.
Spectacular. Go on then, talk to me about innovation. What do you mean about innovation?
So there is a dictionary definition for innovation, which is creating new and better ways to solve problems, improve experiences, or deliver value.
Okay.
But I think one of the big issues with this subject is that I'm not sure always that's what, when people talk about innovation, what they actually think about and actually mean, because often I think nowadays we think it's all got to be about building cutting edge products or big transformations. It's often very tech based. It's what the Silicon Valley companies do. Or if you just add tech to the end of anything, insure tech, fintech, ed tech, it means it's innovation, doesn't it? Whereas what do we mean by
coffee tech?
Coffee tech. You could, I tell you, drink tech. There will be someone out there who's doing drink tech.
Clean up. Yeah.
Anyhow, what do we mean by innovation, James?
Well, before we get into that, there is a debate, just because it's an innovation doesn't necessarily mean it's an improvement.
No.
So I had a quick look and I found some innovations that weren't necessarily improvements. There you go. The Segway. Do you remember the Segway?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a fabulous innovation. You think how clever that is. Was that an improvement to anybody's life whatsoever?
Do you know what happened to the guy who invented the Segway?
Didn't he really move or something? What happened?
No, he fell off a cliff whilst riding a Segway.
That'd be a lesson to you. Here's another one for you. New Coke. Do you remember New Coke? When was that? Was that the 1990s?
New Coke?
New Coke. Do you remember? New Coke was Coca-Cola when they had this whole new rebrand and this reformulation, and they thought they were going to sell loads of it. It just went absolutely flopped, absolutely hideous commercial failure.
No, never heard New Coke.
And another one, I've got this one. This is going back. You tell me you remember this one. I wonder how many people remember this. The Betamax. Do you remember the Betamax?
Oh, yeah. VHS Betamax. Betamax was actually better quality than
absolutely.
VHS.
So even if it is a better quality thing, we used to have one. My dad bought it. It was great because it's double-sided, which the VHS wasn't. But yeah, if you can have this innovation, but if it doesn't hold the market, it's still not worth going for. And I've got an even better one.
Just on that, James, our first video recorder was a VHS, and it was it fell off of the back of a lorry, so new to you, and it got reclaimed by police. Came and knocked on our door and took back our stolen video recorder. I was gutted.
And here's another one for you. So it's not just products, services, failed service innovation. So in the 2010s, the universal credit. Remember the universal credit and all the line about that? So actually, on the face value of it, that was a really good idea because they were trying to simplify. I think about 5 or 6 different sort of credits that people could get and just simplify the whole benefits package. But the system didn't work and it was just implemented badly. And, stuff like it was paid in arrears and people hated it. So innovation might be one thing, but actually not necessarily improvement. It really is about what you do with it and do your customers like it or not.
So there's lots of examples where innovation isn't necessarily a good thing, but despite that, people generally think it is automatically a good thing.
How would you define innovation then?
I would go closer to the actual dictionary definition on this one, James. I think it is about making things better, improving performance, solving problems. So it's not just a sexy tech thing that's the responsibility of the, what do you call yourself? The International Innovation Officer. I think it is something that we all play a part in.
I was a manager, not an officer.
Sorry, weren't that high up. But why do you think innovation is actually important to companies?
Well, I think the first thing is, if you're not improving and innovating all the time, some of the bugger will be.
Yeah.
So you start to lose your competitive edge. You're just standing still if you are not constantly improving.
Well, I think it's even worse than that, isn't it? Because in this current day and age, if you're standing still, you're actually regressing because the world moves on so fast.
And next to that, then, I suppose it's the whole thing about, are you capturing the interest and excitement of your customers?
And your staff as well, because I think that when people are involved in innovation, it can be really exciting. It can be very motivational.
Yeah, there's a bit of a warning on that one there. So I agree, it can be, but it depends how it's done. Because if you're sort of standing back and forcing people to innovate, then you can do it quite badly. So there's this whole thing about, fear of failure. Well, the one I saw was people expecting their team to do overtime to work on innovation processes. So it wasn't actually, it was just more work.
Yeah.
And the staff hated that.
No, I bet.
Yeah. It was the whole thing of fear of failure. And here's a word for you, another one I looked at, but techno stress. You just get all this new stuff. And if it's forced down people's throats, they don't like it. So I think you're right. I think it can be very motivating for staff, but it needs to be in the right way.
Yes. And talking of that, there is a real game-changing opportunity, which is that how do you create the right environment that all of your people can get involved in innovation?
Yeah, because most big companies are busy, have some sort of, transformation director or innovation director, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So they'll have that top-down big project stuff going on. But very few companies really engage with all the small ideas and details and nuances of what's going on. But that's where a huge amount of the waste and pain is. So I honestly think there's a huge opportunity to engage your people in driving that sort of activity.
Yeah. At the end of the day, many brains rather than a few. Don't let it be that transformation director, that innovation officer's job. Engage all of the people, because not only are there many of them, but they are also closer to the work. They're closer to the issues, they're closer to the things that are going wrong, and importantly, they're closer to customers, what customers really want, need, what's getting in their way.
Well, and sorry, bang on about the customer job. I think you make it's a very interesting word in the context of innovation, because it's only an innovation and the improvement if the customer wants it. So I read a lovely couple of articles the other day, and it was about Starbucks.
Yeah.
And the first one was they had this innovation, instead of having the baristas, doing the whole, like Starbucks noise, like, with the
for a second there, James, I thought I was in a Starbucks.
Yeah, heading to Starbucks, But they've invested in these coffee machines, press the button, it grinds. And obviously that's a lot more efficient for Starbucks, but customers hate it because it just takes away some of the mystique of it. It takes away the feeling that you're having something prepared for you. So I can't remember what the chief exec of Starbucks is, but they're backing away from it because customers don't like it. But on the other hand, they've also invested in a little algorithm which tells the baristas in which order to make the drinks so that they make them quicker for the customers.
All right.
And of course, that one the customers love because they get their drink quicker. So the point being, an innovation or an improvement is an innovation or improvement for who? And really, I always go with what your customers think, what's important to them.
Yeah, I had another good example of that, James, where one company I worked in, we decided to handle complaints really quickly. So you get back to people, the same day. And thought, that's people want an answer. And they hated it. And do you know why they hated it? When we looked into it and we saw that their satisfaction had gone down, that they were complaining about the process. They didn't feel that they had been given a proper hearing. So they wanted someone to take a little bit of time on their complaint. And if it was done too quickly, they didn't think that somebody had done that. Even if they agreed with them, they still weren't happy. So your point is a good one, is you can innovate too much and cut out too much, and customers won't necessarily be happy with that.
Yeah, it's a bit like when you go into a restaurant. If you order your food in a restaurant, it's the sort of Goldilocks thing, isn't it? You don't want it delivered too soon because then you think it's been sitting on the side, but you don't want to be waiting too long for it either.
Although the reverse of that can also be true, as in I was on our old friends East Midlands Railway last week, and my train surprisingly was delayed. Obviously, the innovation can't actually get the trains to run on time, but what it could do is when I put in a claim for the late arrival of my train, I don't know if you remember previously.
Delay repay.
Yeah, delay repay. It could take you a couple of weeks to get your money back, and it's quite a painful process. I filled in their form online, and no word of lie, the money was in my bank account within 15 minutes.
Really?
That was something that I was impressed by.
As well as recording this podcast, we help individuals, teams, and entire organisations achieve outstanding results.
If you'd like to find out more about how we can help you, please get in touch. Email either jimmy@ajobdonewell.com or james@ajobdonewell.com.
Anyhow, back to the subject.
Moving back to the subject in hand.
I guess we think that if you really engage people, they'll have better ideas, the many brains versus the few, and you share some of that excitement of innovation. And it's not just tech companies or innovation teams that have to do this. Actually, it should be all of us. It should be all our responsibilities to improve things and innovate within our organisation. What's one of your favourite sayings, James?
One of my favourite sayings. We all have two jobs. One is to do your job, and the other is to do your job better.
And who was that from?
I don't know, actually. I'd like to claim that as mine.
It just says yours.
Know, maybe not. It might have been. I'm not
Come
sure.
on.
It probably
was. Donald Lawther, just tell us it's yours.
Hang on. I'm just going to check that. No, I've Googled it. It might have been mine. There is no obvious quote anywhere.
It's yours now. That's it.
I'm having
Jay Lawther.
But how do you engage people in getting things done better? That's the real challenge.
So, James, as our innovation officer and our general guru, innovation manager. Accept the promotion, man. Come on.
It was an officer better than a manager.
Of course it is. Jesus.
No.
I am positive, James. Trust me. If you look at all the officers' salaries and the managers, there's only one winner there.
Yeah, maybe should ask for a different job title. Is that what you're telling me? Go on.
Exactly. Anyhow, if you really believe, as we do, that the big opportunity for innovation is in your people, how do you do it?
Well, I think, and you can challenge me here, I think there are three key things that you need to do.
Okay, go on then.
All right. The first thing, obviously, is to have some ideas. What is the improvement? What is it you think will be better?
Yeah.
The next thing, which I think is all important, which people just do not do well at all, but that is test that idea and keep testing it. And we'll come on to talk about that. And then the final thing is to scale it. So testing ideas, look, actually have you scaled it?
Yes. So I don't disagree with you, James, but...
Say that a bit louder.
No, because it hurt me the first time round.
Yeah.
How do you go about identifying or getting your staff to identify the areas for improvement?
Well, there are a number of ways of doing that. I think the first thing actually is just go and listen to them. What's really surprising is the amount of time nobody actually asked them.
Yeah.
What could be better? It's almost that whole thing about come to work and leave your brain on the hook as you go inside. Just sit there, do what you're told, and then go home later. My favourite, the method that's worked best for me is, so come back to this question about purpose, but define purpose. What are you here to do? And your job isn't to, answer the call in 20 seconds. Your job is to make sure that refunds are processed effectively or whatever it might be. But then you ask them, what are the things that get in the way of achieving that purpose?
Yeah.
And the whole Post-it note exercise around that will flush out 1,001 problems that you've got in your organisation that if you could fix would make the whole thing much smoother. So there's one. Simply just ask them.
Awesome. I think another good one that kind of links to that is go and see the work. Go and see the people doing the work, because then you'll identify yourself and they'll tell you some of those things that get in the way. You just got to go and talk to the frontline people, but get them comfortable with being honest about what's really going on, as opposed to just telling you what they think you want to hear. So I think those are two good ways of really helping people unlock the ideas. And then
another one, sorry, let me pile on. Another one, talk to your suppliers.
Yeah.
Your suppliers will invariably have 1,001 ideas of things you could do better.
And that's an interesting point, because when you get to, I guess, the comment that we made about unlocking value through your people, I would include suppliers in that, in your people, because they have often unique insights based on what they see and also what they see elsewhere and what they know. You brought them in for their expertise, and so many organizations bringing suppliers for their expertise and then just ignore them, which is just madness. So yeah, I agree. Listen to your suppliers as well.
Got another one. I've got another one.
This one. Columbo.
Yeah, I am. And now this one will really blow people's socks off. This one. Go and look at your customer complaints. It's obvious. Customers will phone in and they will complain about something. Count your complaints, see what the thing is that's biggest that they complain about, fix it. And people will say, oh, well, that's not very innovative, James, is it? Right? But I'm not in the, let's create the internal combustion engine here. I'm just in the, what can we fix? It's not working very well. So go and look at your customer complaints. Obvious, but very few people do it.
No, I think that's very true. But I think it's wider than that, is just generally listen to your customers. I've done things like customer surveys or even focus groups. And that was one of the most eye-opening experiences I had, was actually observing some focus groups where customers talked about their real life problems and their real life interactions with the organization I was working for. That really, changed my views on what we needed to do and what we needed to fix for them.
But then the other thing I would say, and I would say this, wouldn't I? But this gives you a list of 1,001 things that you could fix, but really understanding the data and working out which one of those things is the most important. Otherwise, you end up with a sort of chief executive's wife complains about something, and just because his wife happens to have noticed it, or her husband, whatever it might be, but you just end up fixing the wrong thing. So it's, which are the big issues? You get to an interesting cultural thing there, don't you? Which is, your chief executive's found something that doesn't work terribly well. He starts jumping up and down about it. And what you really want to do is go up to him and say, for fuck's sake, that's irrelevant. Look at all this shit over here. But it's not, it's a bit career limiting, isn't it, if you do that? So that gives you a list of problems.
Yeah.
But then in terms of solutions, everybody's got ideas of what you can do. So it then is just creating a list of ideas of things that could work. Yeah, so then you've got a list of things to go and try, which then leads me on to the next thing, I think, which is testing.
Go on. And how do you recommend people think about testing these solutions?
Well, there's a thing called the scientific methods, or plan, do, study, act, which is really, well, here's my plan. How is it working at the moment?
Yeah.
What am I going to change? Have I got some measure to see if it works or not? Yeah. Then, of course, you go away, you run your experiment, you try it out. Yeah. Then the next thing, study, well, did it work or did it not work? Yeah. If it didn't work, what did I learn from it? So I made that either into then rolling out that improvement or throwing it out and trying the next one. But it's just a sort of circle of going round and round and round, constantly iterating, but always knowing what you expect to happen. Did it happen or not? So it's very straightforward. But most organizations, they're just into do. They change something, they change something, they change something. Yeah, and they don't really ever get on top of the situation. So there you go. That's testing, I think.
And then the final thing that you mentioned was scaling, which I think is often where organizations then fall down, because they don't then figure out, if you've got something that's worked, how do you scale it up into a size that can make a material difference to your organization? Yeah. And we experienced a couple of things here that were quite eye-opening. One was the fact that you have to think about how you're going to sustain the change right from the start, build it into the design. Don't wait till you've rolled it out and then think, how do we change? How are we going to sustain this? What's going to keep it alive? I think another aspect was really thinking the what's in it for me through for people, because they're only going to absorb the new change if they really understand the value. And the final thing that I would mention was whether you make the change optional. And I don't mean at a frontline level, but one of the projects that we did, you found a really great way of working that improved one particular business area. And our boss showed it to everyone else, and it said, it's optional. It's up to you if you want this new innovative way of working that delivers, multiples on your result. It's optional. So funny enough, half the people adopted it, got good results, and half of them who suffered from the wasn't invented here syndrome ignored it.
Well, I think you really hit an interesting point there. So you've discovered something that works and makes a fantastic difference. Once you know it works, you want to spin it out as far and as fast as you can. So the example for me, I started my career, we probably discussed working for Birdseye. I used to make fish fingers, but Birdseye made fish fingers, and then they made chicken fingers, and then they made vegetable fingers, and they'd put anything in a flipping finger that they thought they could sell once they got the technology to make it. So really, it's spinning the idea out as far as it will go until it runs out of legs. I think it's called.
Well, it's the classic, find the one best way of doing it, and everyone should do it that way till you find a better way of doing it, and then that becomes the one best way of doing it.
Totally correct.
So we've got these three things: idea, test, and scale. But there are probably some other things that you need to do to support the change, though, aren't they?
Well, and I think it's all about the sort of processes you've got and the culture that you have.
Yeah.
Which I mean, so the processes, that's the hard stuff. But do you have an innovation process? Is it clear if you've got an idea where somebody goes with it? Have you got somewhere you can test things? Is there a way of elevating ideas so that people can see them? So there's that whole sort of management process about it. A company that did really well with this, and it's a bit surprising, was Whirlpool.
Yeah.
So they washing machines and tumble dryers and things like that.
Yeah.
Of course, customers really aren't interested in white goods. It's all the flipping saying. But they really went to town on it. And I can't remember what the stats were, but they ended up making something like 20, 30% of their revenue every year from new to market innovations. It was about really getting hot on the process. And then the other thing for me really is the culture. So have you provided the space and the time for people to be able to do these things? The whole thing about fear of failure, we touched on it, but that's all important. People think they're going to get slapped about every time something goes wrong. Well, don't be surprised if they're not trying new things. So how do you make it almost an expectation that people are going to try stuff? Is there anything you'd add to that?
There's a big cultural spin to this to make it something that people want to do. They know that you're going to listen to them. They know you're going to adopt the ideas. It makes the workplace a more dynamic and interesting place at the end of the day. So, I can see how both the processes that you have for innovation and the culture around it are going to either help or hinder your ability to innovate.
Yeah, I did read something quite interesting the other day. It was about efficiency. And they were saying that efficiency is the antithesis of innovation, which actually, when you dig into it, makes some sense. So if you are hell-bent on tying everything down to the last seconds and you don't give people any time whatsoever, you're not accepting any failure, then don't be too surprised if you don't have any innovation. But then that's almost like the death knell for any organization. The minute they get so focused on efficiency that nobody's doing any innovation, then you've got a big problem, haven't you?
Definitely. So you mentioned Whirlpool, James, but anyone else that you know that does this well, or that you've done well yourself?
Well, there are loads of examples of organizations that do this well. I mean, so you've got now, is it 10% time or is it 15% time? I think it depends who you listen to.
10% time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Google.
But interestingly, 3M as well had exactly the same approach, which is you give people the time. And whether or not you actually got the time, I'm not sure, but it was almost sort of an expectation that you would do it. So there's one.
On that, James, I think that is a great example of a signposting that has a big cultural impact, because having visited Google at the time, they definitely didn't give people 10% of their time to innovate, but they did. It was kind of symbolic. It was that everyone should be spending some of their working time trying to innovate. But they had all sorts of things, like Gmail came out of somebody's 10% time, didn't it?
Yeah, but you come back to the point here about being an expectation. One of the interesting things about Google is this whole thing about the canteen. Food in the canteen is very good, and it's cheap or free. I'm not sure. I never worked with. But all the canteens are laid out in benches.
Yeah.
So people are mingling when they sit down, which promotes conversations, which promotes connections, which promotes innovation. So really, it's how you think about it as an organisation as a whole. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please share it with someone you think would benefit from it.
Also, like and follow us wherever you get your podcast, or on LinkedIn, TikTok, or YouTube. And 5-star reviews are always welcome.
And equally, if you've got any feedback on how we can improve the podcast, subjects you'd like us to cover, or questions we can help you with, please do get in touch. Email jimmy@ajobdonewell.com or james@ajobdonewell.com.
Another example I'd call out was Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon would be well known for the fact that Jeff did this in his garage, scaled it to one of the world's biggest companies, and now is going for the most garish wedding you could ever imagine in Venice. But what you will know less about them is the fact that they do understand the opportunity of getting all their people to innovate. And they do have processes that anyone can follow in any job. You follow the same process to try and develop your idea, and it's open to everyone. So everyone was clear on the importance of innovation. It's everyone's job, but how they then go about getting their ideas to the right people who can help them.
Yeah. And I do think there's something about it coming from the top of the organization. Yes. So with both Google and Amazon, that clearly is the case. I do think as well, so we talk about it coming from the top of the organization, but I think there is a question of what you can do in your own bit of the organization.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right, your chief executive might be not very interested in it, but that doesn't mean you can't do it within your part of the business. You just need to provide cover for people to be able to do these things.
And I think you're right, James. That's where there is a big opportunity for people in organizations, whether it's you as an individual or in a small team or whatever unit you're running. You can innovate on how you do things better, along with some of the ways that we've talked about doing it today. Anyone can do that. It doesn't need to come from the top, but you just have to make sure you follow that ideas, test, scale, and then think about processes and culture supporting that. So in summary, James.
Well, I think the key thing for me is if you haven't got all of your people, everybody's got 2 jobs, trademark James Lawther. Yeah, to do their job and do their job better. But if you haven't engaged them all in doing their work better, then you're just missing huge opportunities.
Absolutely.
So I think that is the key point for me.
Yeah. So don't leave it to the innovation or transformation teams, and don't just add tech to the back of a word and think that that's innovation. Leverage the potential of your people. But as you say, James, you've got to create the right environment for them to be able to do that.
And yes, so I think there is a difference. There's a difference between knowing your people have got good ideas, but also creating an environment to unlock that. And if you're hell-bent on chasing down efficiencies, then you won't ever create that environment. If you're going to change something, measure it, see if it works or not. Otherwise you just get this scenario where people change, and nothing ever happens. You just bounce about.
You also get caught in that, James, in gut feel. I think it's got better, but I would do because it was my idea. So
yeah, absolutely. It was a brilliant idea.
So hopefully people have found that useful in terms of our view of innovation and how you can unlock it. Tune in next week for the season finale. All right. Thanks, then.
Peace now. Ta-ra.